Chapter 7, Dusty Rhodes. Eventually, Don and I started looking for someone else to be his regular tag team partner. Even though I was sufficient, and we were the American Tag Team Champions, the fans saw me as a tough guy who could take a beating, but not as someone who could beat a top wrestler. I realized that and wanted the spoiler to team with someone of his stature. One day, Don and I came into the Fort Worth dressing room for a KTVT taping, and we saw this 260-pound blonde-headed kid with granny glasses on reading a book of poetry. We went over, said hello to him, and he introduced himself as Virgil Runnels. During the course of our conversation, he mentioned that his ring name was Dusty Rhodes. I'm a big fan of the movie A Face in the Crowd, where Andy Griffith starred as Larry Lonesome Rhodes, so I suggested, what about calling yourself Lonesome Rhodes? Well, I don't plan on being lonesome, Dusty said, clearly unimpressed. I think I'll stick with Dusty. When it came time for Dusty's match, Don and I went out to see him wrestle. We liked his look, but that was all we knew. I can't say I was blown away by his finesse, because he wasn't very good at the mechanics of wrestling, and only knew how to do a clothesline and a hammerlock. I was most taken with his charisma and energy, though, and felt he would be the perfect partner for the spoiler. The next day we all showed up to tape TV in Dallas, and when Danny told me that Dusty was scheduled to do a job for Grizzly Smith, I was mortified. For the life of me, I couldn't fathom why they would even consider sacrificing Dusty on TV by turning him into a jobber. In those days, when the format of the evening was presented to Fritz, it was written in stone, and there were no changes. It was impossible to do. I found Fritz, and as soon as he saw me he groaned, "I don't want to talk with you today. I'm running my TV, so keep your opinions to yourself." I paid no mind to his request, and said, "Fritz, this territory desperately needs a young piece of talent like Dusty Rhodes. Please reconsider using him as a jobber tonight." Fritz completely ignored me, so for the entire taping I just stood behind him as he watched the monitor, and after every match I started in again. Finally, right as Dusty and Grizzly were going into the ring, I got in Fritz's face and screamed, "Fritz, this is going to be the biggest mistake you will ever make, because Dusty Rhodes has tremendous potential." Exasperated, Fritz asked, "If I let you go down there and change the finish, will you leave me alone for the next hour of taping?" I was overjoyed, and as I ran towards the ring, hollered, "You won't see me at all." Before the match could start, I ran down to the ring, jumped on the apron, and called referee Danny Pletches over. I told him that there was a change in the finish, and that Fritz wanted Dusty to go over. Danny just looked at me like I was ribbing him, and told me to get off the apron. I quickly called Dusty over and whispered, "Fritz really likes you. You're going over Grizzly tonight." Dusty didn't believe me either, and during the match, I had to jump back on the apron and instruct Danny to tell Grizzly to put Dusty over. After Dusty won, I jumped into the ring, raised his hand, and declared myself his manager. When we got back to the dressing room, Fritz was livid. He figured I would have Dusty get disqualified, but never thought that I would take it as far as I did. But it was too late. And from that day on, Dusty Rhodes was made in Texas. The following week, I debuted the new tag team of Dusty Rhodes and the Spoiler against Luthez and Billy Red Lions, and Dusty immediately became a major player in wrestling. One time Don Jardine, Dusty Rhodes, Danny Pletches, and I went to Corpus Christi, but a hurricane canceled the show, so we were stuck in a hotel. We ordered food from room service, and among other things, they brought us a big glass milk bottle and a bunch of hard rolls. We were so restless being locked up that we decided to have an impromptu baseball game in our room. We played 9 innings of baseball with the milk bottle as our bat and the hard rolls as balls. So as the hurricane was doing tremendous damage to Corpus Christi, we were so enthused with our game that we paid no attention. One of the things that I could never get used to in Texas was how black people had to sit in their own section of the balcony. In the mid-60s, racial prejudice was still quite prevalent, but since I was an inner-city kid who went to school with a lot of black people, I had never looked at them as different from anyone else. I even remember when I went to visit my brother-in-law in Norfolk, Virginia, when I was 12 years old. I took a bus through Missouri, Tennessee, and the Virginias, and I saw signs that read, "Whites Only." That had a profound effect on me. I also saw how blacks were treated in the South, and it was not a pleasant thing to witness. Those experiences put something deep in my soul at a very young age, making me very sensitive to what black people had to endure. Aside from how the black fans were segregated in Texas, I saw black wrestlers in the territory treated poorly, as well. There was a black journeyman wrestler by the name of the Sundown Kid, who actually helped train Fritz von Erich to become a wrestler. One night in Dallas, the Sundown Kid was booked against Bob Geigel, and Bob was not happy to be booked against a black wrestler, so he went out and really abused the Sundown Kid. After the match, Fritz, who co-owned the Dallas territory, didn't say a word to Bob about it. Even though the Sundown Kid helped train Fritz in his early year, the mindset was, abusing black wrestlers was par for the course. Back then, though, black wrestlers were rarely booked against white wrestlers in Texas. Not only did a lot of white wrestlers not want to get in the ring with black opponents, but Texas promoters didn't think the fans would want to see a black wrestler face a white wrestler. I even requested to wrestle Tiger Conway in Fort Worth, and was told in no uncertain terms that no one wanted to see that. I resented that attitude, and was intent on breaking that mindset. Shortly after my request was denied, I went to ringside during a Tiger Conway television match to taunt him, and when he jumped out of the ring to attack me, the audience went nuts. I immediately challenged him, and promoters were forced to book us in several matches. And each time I put him over, every black fan in the balcony would stand up and cheer for me as I left the ring, because even though my in-ring character was that of an evil guy, they realized that deep down I was a decent man. From that day on, I had a special place in the hearts of the black wrestling fans of Texas. I am very proud to have helped broken those barriers in Texas, and to this very day, I have a strong connection with black people in Texas. On April 4, 1968, Tiger and I were on the same card, and it was the same night that Reverend Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis. I drove Tiger home after the matches, and racial tensions were at a fever pitch. When we got to his predominantly black neighborhood, he assured me, "Don't worry, Gary, they know you're with us all the way." Tiger is a great guy, and is still a friend of mine to this day. My career was doing well, things couldn't have been better, and it seemed like the perfect time to marry my girlfriend, as we had been together for a couple of years by then. We got married on June 19, 1968 at a friend's house. Don Jardine was the best man, and my wife's best friend Marcy was the bridesmaid. Our wedding date, June 19th, is also known as Juneteenth. That's a big holiday in Texas, because it's when the Emancipation Proclamation was first read in Texas. I knew that if I got married on Juneteenth, I would never forget my anniversary, and that's why I picked that day. If we had picked the 12th or the 4th, I would have forgotten it every year, because I was never good at details unless it involved business. Dusty and the Spoiler were partners for quite a while, and we all became tight friends. However, in late 1968, Dusty left to Kansas City, where he formed a tag team with Dick Murdoch called the Texas Outlaws. They were both Texas boys, and it seems wherever Texans go they eventually find each other. The Texas Outlaws made a great name for themselves in Kansas City, and I'm very proud of what Dusty went on to accomplish in wrestling. I'm also proud that I'm the one that found him. For the Christmas 1968 show in Fort Worth, I wrestled Wahoo McDaniel, and later that night, I managed the Spoiler in his match against Johnny Valentine. The reaction the Spoiler got that night was amazing, because he was the overwhelming babyface for his match. That was the first time that the Spoiler was received as a full-fledged babyface, and it showed me just how much the Spoiler was loved by the Texas wrestling fans. For the New Year's show was in Dallas, the Spoiler wrestled Wahoo, and I had the honor of working with Johnny Valentine, one of my boyhood idols. It's funny, because even though I had known Johnny since my days in Chicago, and was actually friends with him, I was in awe of him that night, because I never anticipated that I would ever work against him one-on-one. After manhandling me for 5 minutes, Johnny got tired of pounding on me and just pinned me. I had never been beat up so bad in my entire life, and I relished every second of it. When we got back to the dressing room, he said he would have gone longer, but he was losing his heat every time he hit me, because the people went crazy. I have very few memorable moments in my career, but that match with Johnny Valentine is definitely one of them. That was a great thing for me, wrestling my boyhood idol Johnny Valentine.